just post something.
Hi. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast, presented by Hippo Direct. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, digital marketing dude at Hippo Direct, and you can reach me at max@hippodirect.com for help using your podcast as a marketing tool. Now, before we get into today's episode, I do want to say thank you so much to everyone who voted, the amazing wild listeners, and the spectacular guests we've had on the show. If you have not heard already, the Wild Business Growth Podcast charted on the first ever Hot 50 in Podcast Magazine. It's an amazing honor, and some of the biggest names in the podcasting world are on that list. And, it's really everything that makes this show so special all comes from you guys and all the support and ideas and time you put in. So just feeling very, very grateful right now. So thank you. Thank you very much. Now, speaking of podcasts, this is podcast episode 80, and today's guest is Andréa Jones. Andréa is a social media strategist who is the founder of OnlineDrea and Social Media for Podcasts, and she, of course, hosts the Savvy Social podcast. She knows social media, she knows podcasts. Social media has even impacted her personal life much more than the average person. So let's get social. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Andréa Jones, OnlineDrea, the podcast social media whiz, and pretty much the coolest person in the world. How you doing today, Andréa?
Thanks for the intro. I'm doing fantastic now that I've got that little uplift today.
Oh, perfect. I knew it. Well, you sent me that script to read beforehand, so I was just reading off it.
Dang it, Max. I told you not to say that. No, just kidding.
Couldn't resist. But this is really cool reconnecting. We've met in person once before and been connected online for a while, but this is cool reconnecting in the podcast space. We're going to get to a lot about your expertise and tips in the social media landscape, and especially focus on social media for podcasts and podcasters out there. But before we get into that, I do want to start off with YouTube. And not in terms of best practices or marketing YouTube or anything like that, but you have a story about YouTube that has a big impact to your personal life. Do you mind sharing that story with us?
Yes. So I met my husband on YouTube. So I
Oh,
I know we are like the product of social media.
if YouTube and YouTube had a baby.
Yes, exactly. But we were creating content. So I was almost like vlogging my life, like not daily vlogging, but definitely covering my life and topics that interest me. And my husband, or like he was at the time just a fellow YouTuber, was doing these like angry comedy rant videos. And we collaborated on a video together that had a little comedy to it. It was called Kill, Bang, or Marry. And we did it with
Oh, of
our
course.
yeah, of course. With our favorite YouTubers like Jenna Marbles and Philip DeFranco and that kind of thing. And so we collaborated on this video, and we had been collaborating with other people as well. So it's not like we found each other and just collaborated that way. We were doing this collaboration thing, almost like you and I are doing here today, Max, where we were just making this video. But then after we made it, he kept texting me and talking to me, and we lived 1,000 miles apart. So at first I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But we had a real connection. And as they say, the rest is history.
Oh my God. So, be careful who you meet online, because it might turn into your spouse, but it's an amazing story. I love that. It's just beautiful, and you never know what any connection would turn into. What was your reaction at first when you guys were probably what you thought was being done collaborating, and next thing you know, he just continues to text you?
Yeah. So at first, I was really flattered because my first comment on his video was about how I like the color of his eyes. So I was definitely like
Oh,
moving in. Yeah,
you planted the seed early.
I did. But We were just talking, and we had actually both recently got out of fairly serious relationships. So we were just kind of being flirty and friendly at first. It wasn't until we actually got on like a phone conversation, like we actually got, like he called me. And that's really where things flipped and like the energy changed. And we knew that this was not just, casual thing. And so it really went very quickly. He came. Oh no, I went to see him in Toronto in like November, and then he visited me in December in Atlanta, and then I was back in Toronto by January, and then by March I fully moved to Toronto. So it was a fairly whirlwind experience.
It definitely was. And you moved to a different country. Was there some debate there about whether he was coming down or you were going up?
No, and it's actually funny. My mom was like, "Oh, good, you're only moving to Canada," because she had it in her head that I was gonna move. Like I was always been that way. Like I'm gonna move off somewhere and go live in another country. She was like, "Oh, good, it's Canada. It's close." So I knew I wanted to move to Canada, and at the time I was working in hospitality. I had this job that I was just not loving anyways, and my husband had a really good job. He was like working for this startup company. He was one of their directors and one of their first employees. So he was like like a part of this company that was doing really well. And so for me, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll leave everything behind and move to another country. I, I,
Yeah.
if I knew how hard it would be to actually get citizenship here, I probably would have second guessed it. But
Oh,
yeah, here we
really?
are. Yeah.
Yeah, there you are. And so your mom, okay, so she was happy that you moved to, just our neighbors next door, the country next to us. Well, now I'm your neighbor, I guess. But what was your mom's reaction or your family's reaction in general when they found out that you were dating someone from YouTube and ultimately will get married to them?
My immediate family wasn't surprised. This is I feel like I have always been a fairly introverted person, but also like I tend to be very serious about my like relationships. I think it's because I'm introverted. I just have a few relationships, but they're very deep. And so for them, none of my immediate family was surprised. My Some of my friends and like my coworkers were very concerned. They were like, "He could be a serial killer, you don't know."
A serial YouTuber, though.
Exactly. Like, I was just watching the You Show on Netflix,
Hmm.
and I was thinking, "Oh, I mean, it could have been that situation where he turns out to be some sort of obsessed murderer, but no, he's fairly normal."
Well, that's
So,
good.
yeah, I
That's
lucked
comforting.
out.
You did. So, I mean, we can tell from that story that social media is obviously a big part of your life and impacts you in more ways than just the business sense. But when you think back to kind of how you first got into the social media world, like was it on YouTube or were you on other social media sites before that? What did it look like?
I started blogging in 2004. I was in high school at the time, and I was very shy. In fact, in second grade, I got in trouble for not talking when called upon.
You got in trouble for not talking.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because I made a business out of talking now. um,
Right. Yeah. I don't think it would work the same way for you now.
yeah, but I was very shy. I did not talk, but I had things to say, and so I started blogging actually about Harry Potter. And again, just kind of sharing my thoughts about the world around me. And, this was like way back in the day. So that transformed into creating social media. My blog was called Simply Andrea. It still exists in some form today, but it really was me sharing my thoughts about life. And I liked that I could control the presentation of it. So I found it hard to put my thoughts together. That's why I wasn't talking. And blogging actually helped me develop those. But then it also turned into this amazing opportunity to connect with people. So I actually got on YouTube because there was this other site that I can't remember the name of now that just didn't exist. And my friend on that site was like, you should go to Tumblr because Tumblr is kind of like, I think it was called like daily pictures or something. We were literally just like daily blogging. Anyway,
Yeah.
so then we went to Tumblr, and it was like Tumblr turned me on to YouTube. And so that evolved into me having this community of people who lived all over the world, but we all like talking about kind of the same things, and we were all like sharing our lives. And I really, really enjoyed that community experience. And so for me, social media, I love it. I love that I can connect with people. I love that I can choose when to connect it. I can turn it off when I want to. But I just love that being able to be in the same space as people who like the same things as you. Because I wouldn't say I'm like really weird, but I have some like odd combinations of tastes
Oh,
that
come
like
on. We love the weird here.
yeah, like I mean Harry Potter, that's pretty normal, right? A lot of people like Harry Potter, but then I
Yeah,
also like
Wingardium Leviosa.
exactly, there you go. So, but like going deep into it, like knowing your house and like, playing the different Harry Potter games, like a lot of people are like, ah, that's too far. But online, you can find your people. Like I found my, fellow Hufflepuffs out there. And so yeah, it was a chance to like be communal with people who got it, whereas where I lived in my town and in my school, I didn't have those connections, I didn't have those opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, congrats on your bid into Hufflepuff. That's very exciting.
Thank you. I used to think I was a Slytherin.
Ooh, okay, yeah. This interview could have taken a dark turn there, but it is that is one of the coolest parts about social media is the community aspect. And so you had that as what you were doing as a creator before, and you're still a creator to this day. But at a certain point, you became really a social media strategist and formed OnlineDrea and helped so many people in the business in the small business world with their social media. So when did that change? When did you go from talking about things to actually really consulting and helping people?
Yeah, so the start of that journey was a little fuzzy. So I knew that I wanted to work in social media even when I was in my hospitality job. So I was a manager at a spa. I had recently switched companies and I basically worked for a larger company. It was Marriott Hotels and I was the manager of one of the spas. And being the youngest person on the team, they're like, "You need to be in charge of social media." And I was like, this is awesome. This is part of my job. I wish it were my whole job. And they kind of laughed, like, huh, that'll never happen. And so even back then, I was really interested in the world of like putting things online. It wasn't until I moved, like, met my husband, moved to another country where I was like, oh, I could turn this into a career. And he's the one who really kind of helped me figure out the freelancing side of it because I had no idea people were freelancing online before. I knew people were creating content online, but I didn't really understand the freelancing side. So he's the one who really like pointed me in the right direction there. And he has a big history in the sales world. So he taught me a lot about like selling clients on this like idea of a service. And I did a lot of things at first. I was, writing blogs, product descriptions. With my history on YouTube, I was actually creating these like fake commercials for people like buy this shampoo. It was awful, the dark days. But I was doing a lot. I was doing a lot and then I finally landed my first social media client, and that's when things really took off because that's what I wanted to do. I was passionate about it. I was able to produce a really good product for my clients, and it was way more consistent than any of the other odd freelancing jobs that I had before. Because once my clients like hired me for social media, they didn't want me to stop doing it because then they would have to do it or they would have to find someone else. So I kind of like landed on this repeatable business structure that is how I was able to grow into what I do today.
Voila, there we go. And so yeah, and it's an amazing thing, and it's something that social media is so important to people because it is the outward view of their brand, and obviously personal brands are becoming bigger and bigger, but it is such a time commitment. So somebody like you is like a total lifesaver in that regard. When you look back at how your business has grown over the past several years, what would you say is the top way that you've been able to grow your business and to attract more clients?
I think the biggest part of what I do is consistency. So it's actually not very glamorous. I used to say in the early days, the reason I was successful is because I would actually do the work. So there's this challenge online where it's like it's glamorous to market yourself. It's glamorous to close a deal and to get the contract and to get paid, but then you have to do the work. And that's where I really set myself apart from other freelancers because I was getting clients who would go, "Man, I hired this person and then they ghosted me and I never heard from them again," which unfortunately is easy to do online. And so
Yeah.
in the early days for my clients, they were just happy to have someone who would actually do what they said they were going to do. And that was huge for me in the beginning. And that helps me build up a lot of trust with my clients and customers. And thankfully, today, a lot of my business is referral based. So, because of that, I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, you should hire Andrea because I hired her and she did, a good job," or whatever the case may be. The second piece to that is also hiring a team. So I got burned out fairly quickly, probably I would say about 3 years in. So I guess that's not really fairly quickly. Uh,
Yeah, that could be like a blink of an eye, though, as a business owner.
yeah, it felt really quickly, and it felt like I was working all the time. And social media never sleeps.
This is true.
Yeah, and that was about a year after the US presidential election, which uncovered a lot of nastiness on the internet at the time. And so that's when I started hiring my team. And I don't think I could have continued putting myself online creatively for myself had I not hired the team to help support my clients. So
Yeah.
thankfully today I have the team where we can kind of divide and conquer and continue to show up and do good work, because just me by myself, it was very hard for me to do that and to create.
Well, you've built a phenomenal team around you and just continue to grow your brand in impressive ways. What I think is the coolest, I don't know if that is grammatically correct. This is just a spiral here. What I think is so cool about what you do is somewhere along the way, and kind of as you got into the podcasting world and more familiar with podcasting, you really found a niche with social media for podcasts. So I know, some of your accounts online bear that same name, and there's, the podcasting world is growing and growing, and the social media world is growing and growing, but there's not many people out there that specialize in social media for podcasts, and you are like the premier person. So how'd you decide to focus on that niche in the first place?
It started when I started the podcast. So I had a
No.
few, yeah, imagine that.
I believe you.
Well, I had a few clients who were podcasters, and I was intrigued about the medium. When I started the freelancing side of the business, I actually stopped making YouTube videos. Again, it's very hard to create when I was creating for clients. And then I wanted to get back into it again. And I was like, podcasting seems way easier than worrying about video. And so that was when I decided to start the podcast. And it's funny because I can see when I purchased the domain name, which was about 9 months before I actually started the podcast. So,
Wow.
yeah, I had a bit of doubts in there. But one of the things that really helped was I joined a challenge that was hosted by Podcast Movement. They've got this
Oh,
30-day challenge to
of
start your
course.
podcast. That combined with Pat Flynn's course really helped me get started. And at the end of that 30 days, I actually won a ticket to Podcast Movement.
No way.
Yeah.
Which, full disclosure, is where we met in the first place. So we have that to thank as well.
Yes, exactly. So the funny thing is, I had no plans of going to Podcast Movement until I won that ticket. And that completely changed my podcasting career. So I won the ticket to Podcast Movement. This was in June of 2018. So I went to Podcast Movement, and as I was planning to go, I was thinking about all of the people who are going to be there and how I can connect with them. I had already been doing this for my clients. So I had some t-shirts printed up and I made a landing page called socialmediaforpodcasts.com. And that's how it started. It was just a kind of little wiggle of an idea because I won a ticket to go to a conference, and that really jump started everything and changed how I work with clients. And so I have a lot to thank for Podcast Movement for that, for inviting me to come out to the event. But that, I mean, it really was that simple. It wasn't even a full on website. It was just a landing page and some t-shirts and an Instagram account.
Yeah, and you're able to get that handle and lock down everything. Well, you clearly know your target in that case, which is obviously so important on social media, whatever you're doing. But podcast movement and the podcast community is just such a perfect match for you. And what better way to learn these tactics and tips and tricks than actually doing them yourself with your podcast? So it's kind of you got a good thing going there. So
Yeah.
let's get into more of some of the strategy or tactics. So what would you say is the number one thing that podcasters should be doing on social media?
So there's a few things, but I would say the number one thing is really talking about your podcast with your listener in mind. So I think sometimes we talk about our podcasts because we get excited about the episodes and we want to share them out, but we forget to add in reasons why people should listen to them. Because especially on a platform like social media, it's a little interruptive. We weren't necessarily looking for a new podcast to listen to. So if we think about putting our shows, our episodes, our creations out there, but in such a way that really draws people in, like what would they benefit? Like what would they get from listening to your episode? Then I think that is a really huge game changer for a lot of podcasters.
Yeah, listener, it's going back to your target, knowing your listener. It's the same sort of thing. How about when it comes to sharing out your podcast? So there's a lot of debate, and we see it. I know we see it a lot in the podcast movement Facebook group. There's so much debate about like what's the right way to share out your episodes and what's the way to do it. Because there's so many different ways you can do it, and of course, as podcasters, we want our shows on as many different platforms as possible. So, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think it again comes back to the listener. So I'll give an example. One of my clients works as a therapist for parents of teenagers, and they tend to be a little bit of an older parent, and they don't really listen on the apps. And we found out that a lot of people just go to the website and click play on an embedded player, and that's how they listen. And we
Boom.
found, yeah, so
See, it does work.
it does work. And so we end up sharing a lot of the direct links to the embedded player on the website because that's what works the best. But the only way we could figure that out was by trying a bunch of different things. So there's a lot of things that work in general, but then you've got to figure out what works for you and for your audience. But if you're on a platform like Facebook or LinkedIn where you can add multiple links, why not add a few different options? Like, okay, here's how to listen on the website and here's how to like listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever the case may be. So start doing that and seeing who clicks what. There's a lot of different ways you can track those links. There's a lot of different things you can do there. But I think we sometimes get caught up in that, like, what's the best way to do it when really it comes back down to one, share out your episode to begin with, and number two, have a transformation in that caption so people can see, oh, if I watch this episode, I'm going to listen to something funny or get something insightful or be entertained for an hour or whatever the case may be. Like, really, really spell that out. And then if it's really good, people will find it.
I don't know if I've ever heard transformation used in that approach. Could you spell out or more what you mean with that from like the caption standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's more focusing on the feeling that someone will have when they're listening to your show or listening to a specific episode. So, let me give another example of a life coach that I work with. Oftentimes, her episodes really help people change the way they think about a specific challenge that they're having. So that's what we want to highlight in that caption. So yes, we can talk about something like this episode is about, how to deal with your in-laws at the holidays. Like, yes, we could talk about that, but really, if we dig deeper, we're talking about the feeling of dealing with your in-laws during the holidays as an example. So do you want to feel more confident in those conversations? Do you want to feel more appreciated by the people that you're talking to? Like, those are transformative feelings that really help engage your audience and understand what's in it for them. So if they listen to that episode, yes, they're going to get the fact of how to deal with their in-laws over the holidays, but they're also going to get the feeling of that, which is they may feel more confident. They may feel more welcomed and loved in their family. And so those things are transformations. And if we can add those transformations into our captions, we're more likely to convert people into actually listening to that episode.
Oh, so it's really like an emotional appeal then. It's
Absolutely.
being in touch with the emotions of your listeners. So, okay, cool. So that makes sense. So that's kind of on the caption side of things. What about for the visual? Because you could do still images, you could do images with quotes, you could do videos or audiograms. Are there any one of these things that I just listed, or maybe more things that you could think of that tend to work better on social media and when in terms of promoting a podcast or a new episode?
Yes. So if you can post an image with your episode, that's great. Even if it's just a stock photo, you don't have to get too crazy with it, but as long as you're posting. So I like to think of these as phases. Like phase one is like, okay, just post something. And then phase two is like, okay, now let's improve upon it. Right. So just post something, post an image. I would say if you want to up level it, tools like canva.com are really great to create images for social media. And I would give yourself a template. Like, don't try to create a new image every single time. Maybe create a baseline image that you can change out the text on. Audiograms are interesting, and there's a lot of debate about this. I don't know if you've seen this, Max, but there's a lot of debate about audiograms and when you should be using audiograms. And they
Mm,
are like audio visual representations of your podcast, like little snack size versions of your episodes. And I think they're absolutely lovely if you're working on growing your audience. So they're not for your current fans, they're for new people who haven't listened to your podcasts ever. So I think this is where people get stuck with the audiograms. They're worried about their current fans and they're worried about them listening to the audiogram and not listening to the full episode, or they put a lot of time and energy into creating an audiogram and nobody's converting into listeners. So if you're ready to grow your audience and get new listeners, that's the time to start using audiograms as a part of your strategy as well, because they're really great for people who've never heard of you before. You're really giving them a sample of what they can expect in that podcast episode. So you're taking that transformation and making it a more interactive experience in the audiogram. So that's an advanced strategy, though. If you're just starting to help, just post something. Don't get
yeah,
caught up.
whatever it is. Yeah, personally, and at the time of this recording, I mean, I love audiograms. Like I love to use Wave, WAVVE.co for ours, and they're great. And we get great feedback on how great of teasers they are. But you really have me thinking now because I'm thinking, man, how many of the people viewing ours are seeing our posts are existing listeners, and the audiogram won't make a big difference. And what can we do to kind of reward our current listeners as well? So what would you do? So if audiogram is more of an advanced strategy, PhD strategy for new listeners or growing your podcast, what would you say is the best approach for providing content for your existing listeners, your loyal listeners, your best fans who already know your podcast is coming and are already going to listen to it, but still appreciate seeing some stuff on social media about it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great opportunity to engage them in a conversation about the episode. So they are a member of your community and they're there because they feel some sort of connection to you, your show, your episodes. And so bring them into the process. We're testing out a strategy right now with a client who has a weekly show where about a week or two before an episode comes out, we will do a teaser that is a question around that topic. So she's in the kind of I don't know how to describe this industry, but she basically
Harry
teaches
Potter.
no, not Harry Potter,
Okay.
but she teaches
Damn it.
like parents how to cook for their kids, and
Oh,
how to
I
yeah.
was close.
Yeah, okay. But she helps them like teach their kids how to be in the kitchen as well. Anyway, so we are like teasing out these concepts on social media to her audience before they come out. So, hey, we've got this episode coming out, but we want to get your feedback on this particular idea. And so people are in the comments getting excited about future episodes, but also contributing to the conversation. And so I think that's a key element. Like as you start building up your community, you want to get them involved because yes, your podcast is kind of about you, but it's mostly about them. And so if you can figure out a way to get them excited, but also get them involved and make them feel like they're a part of something, that's going to build those super fans. I was actually recently listening to an episode with Pat Flynn. He was on the Copy Blogger podcast, but he has his book called Super Fans, and it's
Yeah.
based. Yeah, have you read it?
I haven't read it yet. Well, okay, Pat, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I met him at Podcast Movement, and I have a signed copy from him, and
Okay.
we've exchanged. I love Pat, but I'm just like the slowest reader ever. So it's like it's after I finish my current book, it is going to be the one I'm reading, but I have not read it yet. I know the main concepts from it though.
That's okay. I actually haven't read it yet either, so
Oh,
I'm with you.
wow, you're such a terrible person.
I know. I feel like it's the podcast. Like I feel like I got the gist of it by listening to podcasts.
Uh-oh.
Um, but he was saying on this particular episode about the idea of super fans and how you don't actually need a lot of fans. It's based on the theory of the 1,000 true fans. If you Google 1,000 true
Hmm.
fans, you'll be able to read that article. But you actually don't need a lot of fans to be successful. And so, if you could really focus in on nurturing those people into super fans, then they'll actually become your advocates, and they're the ones who are going to talk about your show to other people. And that's so much more powerful than you talking about yourself. Like, we can all talk about how awesome we are all day, but it's so much more powerful if someone else says those things. And so, you really want to nurture that through posts that really start conversations.
I like that. I like that word nurture too. A great way to put it. How about in terms of platforms? So, of course, there's the opportunity. I mean, it comes down to how much time you want to spend in it, and obviously to have all the accounts set up and everything. But you would think you'd want your podcast out there as much as possible. But if you had to pick one or two top platforms at the time of this recording to share your podcast out in social media, what would you go with if you could only pick two platforms?
Yeah, so I'm gonna like do a little bit of an addendum to what you just said. Um,
Oh, you were doing so good. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, but I think it does depend on the industry just a little bit. So
Mhm.
if you are just like in a health and wellness space, or if you're in the coaching space, Instagram is on fire right now, and then so is LinkedIn. So even if you have a business podcast, or you do anything that's kind of self help or personal development, LinkedIn is great. Instagram, everyone I recommend should be on Instagram right now. My addendum to that is Twitter. And I found a really great community of podcasters on Twitter. So we've got like this subsection of podcasting about podcasting that's very helpful. Or if you have anything political, like related to politics, Twitter is where I would recommend for you to go right now. So I say Instagram and LinkedIn, but my addendum is Twitter for certain industries.
It is. And I mean, this is just how my brain is. Like, I stay away from the political, but like, I do love the conversation aspect of Twitter. Like, it is by far the most conversational, and it's so easy to ask questions and to create questions. And also, the Twitter list function is amazing as well. It's really like the best way to organize people that you're interested in and have a list of just their thoughts and what they're sharing out. So, agree with you that Twitter's kind of exciting. We're experiencing more of a revival there, if you will.
Yeah, and I really do hope so because I like Twitter. I think like you said, it's easy to get content out. Just little short ideas is kind of the concept of it. Whereas something like Instagram, you got to worry about the visuals and blah blah blah. So I like Twitter, I do, and so I think that for certain people, it can be a really great platform. I just wouldn't recommend it for everyone just yet. You may be spinning your wheels a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And LinkedIn's a really fun one because they're obviously over the past few years, they've gotten way more interested in actually putting great content and allowing, creators and people to put great content out there. So every now and then you'll notice something gets caught in the algorithm and just kind of stays there for weeks. And I know personally, and for Wild Business Growth, that's where we've seen some of our best performance as far as social media posts for podcasting go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you're right with the algorithm. There's certain posts that get picked up that just kind of hang out for a long time, and I love that about LinkedIn because you actually don't have to put as many posts out there with LinkedIn just because they live so much longer.
Yeah, they do. So kind of on the flip side of things. So what comes to mind as the most common thing, as a thing that people most commonly do wrong about social media for podcasts?
Yeah, so I think podcasters right now, we all want listeners, right? We really desperately want more listeners. And so one of the things that I'm seeing right now is people almost spamming their podcast out there. I've seen it in Instagram direct messages, Twitter direct messages, Facebook groups. I've seen it commented on other people's posts. And I just don't think that's the right approach. I think we are savvy enough as internet users, if we're on social media, to know what a spam comment or a spam DM looks like. And so I think that's something that unfortunately some podcasters have got caught up in is we get so enraptured by our own podcast that we're not really thinking about the approach to other people. And I like to use the analogy of dating here because I think it fits. But if you're like
Go for it.
if you're looking for your person and you see someone in like a Starbucks or something and you go, "Oh my gosh, that person is the one for me." You run up to them and you go, "Marry me right now. Okay, let's do this thing." That may feel a bit aggressive. And so I think when we're thinking about our shows, we're almost doing the same thing. We're going like, "I know this show is awesome. I know you'll like it. Listen to it right now." And it's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't even know you." So
So you're saying that does not work? What?
yeah, exactly. So I think that, I think we're well intentioned as podcasters. I think it's not coming from a bad place. It's just not the right approach. And that's what I see most often we're doing wrong when it comes to social media.
Well, now you're the expert on all things dating as well. So you're just continuing to grow and grow.
I would not say that. Like I was pre Tinder, so I don't even know
Well,
now these
well.
days.
I mean, YouTube is clearly the Tinder of the. We don't need to get down that rabbit hole, but
the dating analogy works because I feel like we've all been there. So just think about it that way.
so you finally decide to start a podcast. Congrats! You've never been more excited. But wait a sec. You quickly find out this is way more of a time commitment than you initially thought. You're going to need someone that has you covered behind the scenes. That's where I come in. Email me at max@hippodirect.com and let's get wild. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get into the mind of Andréa. So think about inspiration and creativity here. What do you do to stay creative?
I really have to give myself the space. I find that if I'm completely booked up, like I've got meetings all day and I'm doing work all day, and then I go, "Oh, I have to make a podcast episode." That's not a good place for me to make a podcast episode. And so for me, I have to make space. That means on Fridays, I don't take any meetings. I clear my calendar, and typically I do have a lot of work stuff to do, but because I know that I have time coming up to create, I actually get excited for it and I feel like I create a better product. But I've got to have like that free time, free space to do so.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. So Friday's your day. I don't think it matters too much what day of the week it is, but it definitely helps to take a day or just block some time that you can free things up and keep things organized. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely subscribe to that. And you just are so knowledgeable about so many things, social media and podcasting. What resources or publishers, or it could be accounts you follow or sites you like to visit? Like, how do you stay in the know and all the things that you stay in the know on?
Yeah, so I like to use social media to my advantage for that. But there are a few key places that I go to look for updates. As far as social media goes, it's things like Social Media Examiner or Social Media Today. As far as podcasting goes, I like to look at a few different resources. There's one I'm trying to think of the name of it. I think it's like Pod News.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah, I love them. Yeah,
okay. It's like
James Cridland.
okay, yeah, yeah. The daily updates.
Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
thinking
yeah.
of the same thing? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's from Australia. Yeah, I met him as well at a podcast movement.
Okay, awesome. Well, I feel like I should know his name, but I don't. So I need to know him. But
Yeah, definitely.
I
Happy to
open
introduce you.
every single one of his emails because it's like the best on keeping up with podcasting news. And so I like to use either email or social media to kind of keep up with some of those things because I want it to be a part of my day. I find that if I have to go look at another app or another place, I'm not going to do it. you know?
Right. Yeah, if it's all in one place. Yeah, why not? And what about hobbies? So besides being, you know, like world's number one Hufflepuff fan or Hufflepuff house member, Hufflepuff. I can't even say Hufflepuff. What other hobbies do you have? What do you like to do outside of work?
Yeah. So obviously, I love to read. And I do host a book club, but I like to read nonfiction books, or sorry, fiction books. Nonfiction feels like work
Wait,
to
which one
me.
is it?
I like to read fiction books. Nonfiction feels like work. So, like, I just talked about Pat Flynn's Superfans book. For me, when I'm reading that, I'm working. But I like to read like adventure novels. I've been in like a psychological thriller vein lately, a
Hmm.
la Girl on the Train kind of thing. So, I've been reading a lot of that, and I host a local book club where we like talk about that in real life. So I would say that's a hobby. But I also like to do things that are very tactile because I spend so much time looking at screens all day. I need something that's not that. So I crochet very awfully. They're terrible scarves and sweaters that I make my family wear. Um,
I'm sure they are definitely at least one step up from terrible. Come on now.
They're
No, I'm
not
sure
that
they're awesome.
great. And then I also, like, sing and play piano, so
Oh my God.
yeah, do
Did
that
you bring your
for fun.
piano today?
No, it's not in my office right now,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah.
Classic pianist trick there. But
Wait, what did you call me?
I know that's a tricky word. It's a dangerous word.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's great though. So let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. This is where we talk about a recent campaign that caught our attention. And earlier we were chatting, and this is something that caught both of our eye, or I guess all four of our eyes. And it was something really, really innovative, kind of in the choose your own adventure space that's kind of we're seeing more life to recently. Can you share what you saw in that space?
Yes, so Samsung in their UK division, just released an interesting, like you said, choose your own adventure game via Instagram stories. So they used Instagram stories as a vehicle for this choose your own adventure. So they had this almost like VR type perspective where you are the person, the main character, and you get to choose what actions he's going to take. And basically, your choices take you to different threads and different Instagram stories to kind of enact what he's doing. So maybe Max, you can put a link in the show notes so people can try it out. But
Definitely. Okay, read my mind.
yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I was telling him to like, oh, go jump over that wall and go follow that person, and I picked the wrong thing, and he ended up dying, and I was really upset about
Oh
it.
no. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun and it stuck in my brain. And so I think that's one of the most unusual things I've seen. And if we think about how we're interacting with the world today, it's kind of, it fits. Like we went from, going to reality TV, right? We want to be in someone's life to doing something like Netflix released that Bandersnatch show. Um,
Yes.
where you got to choose what the characters were doing. And so to have that on social media as well is just such a fun way to do an advertising campaign.
And it's so out of the box. Like I think what's so cool about choose your own adventure is it just goes against the grain. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like it takes you a second to kind of comprehend how it would even work when you do it on a new platform. But in their case, in Samsung's case, they were so innovative. Like they literally created so many different new accounts just for this purpose and just to kind of take you along that path. And I thought that was just brilliant because who would think to create like tons of different new accounts for like one single campaign? Might make sense to create one account, but to create several different ones solely for the purpose of stories is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how people utilize this in other ways. But I actually know the agency that put this together,
Oh,
Social Chain. I was actually on their podcast last year.
oh,
Um,
congrats.
they've got a brilliant team, like brilliant people behind this, and so I think that I like to watch what smart people are doing, and so I really enjoyed the entire process. But like you said, I from like my side of things, I don't even know how they could organize all of that. Like my head's gonna explode with the amount of Instagram accounts they created in order for this to work, you know?
And we're implementing the choose your own adventure podcast. So if you click move back 15 seconds or move back 30 seconds right now, you will be able to hear those exact same 15 or 30 seconds again.
Oh my gosh, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Thank you. You can do it all again if you want. Let's go to the unusual. So you kind of hinted at this before when you called Samsung's campaign unusual, but this one is pet peeves, quirks, and weird talents. So Andrea, what is your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. I don't know if I have one.
Maybe it's your smallest one.
My smallest one?
I'm just gonna. I don't.
I don't know.
What? Nothing ticks you off. Maybe it's something your husband does. Maybe it's something your dogs do that like.
Oh, okay. My biggest pet peeve is when people don't follow through. So if they say they're going to do something and they don't do it, that's really annoying to me.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh my god, it applies to so many different things.
Yeah.
How about quirks? So, is there something about your personality that's a little quirky that maybe your husband calls you out for, or friends, family, coworkers, somebody calls you out for, but it's just part of your personality? You're not going to change.
Yeah. So I mix my I's and my E's when I talk. That
Really?
is very annoying. Yeah. So I say my husband's name wrong. His name is, I can't even say it, Brent, but it sounds like I'm saying it with an I. There's a E.
Like Brent?
Yeah, that's how I say it. So I am
Oh.
working hard on that, actually. That's one of my quirks I want to change. But when I introduce him, I'm like, this is my husband, Brent. And people are like, what? What's his name?
But you have an E in your name too.
Yeah, I know. But mine has like the accent on it. So
True.
Andrea, I don't know. That one I
True.
don't mix up. It's just certain ones, I guess.
And how about weird talents? So, what's something that, and I'm not going to let you say crocheting because you already mentioned that. What's something that you're really, really good at or just unusually talented at, but it doesn't have an impact on your business? So, it could be another arts and craft thing. It could be a memory trick. Could be, just something random. What comes to mind?
So I'm a professionally trained opera singer.
Really?
Yes. I
You
took
said singer. I didn't know opera singer. Wow.
Yeah, well, when I say sing, like when I sing for fun, it's like mostly pop songs. Like Taylor Swift is my favorite.
T Swizzle.
Yeah, T Swift. But when like I can sing opera. Like if you wanted me to sing like Ave Maria, I would knock the shit out of it. But
Really?
yeah, it's just not like a cool thing, you know. So I don't really do it anymore.
Oh, you don't break it out? Do you mind breaking out like one note right now, or is it too
I
hard on
can't.
command?
Yeah, I can't do it on command. But there's
Is
some
there
YouTube if you search for my name, there's some YouTube videos out there of me singing opera. Yeah.
perfect?
Oh,
Okay,
I
show
should say
notes
my
as well.
maiden name. My maiden name is White. So there you go. Andrea
Andrea
White.
White.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
As soon as I
perfect.
met my husband, I was like, no, we're changing this.
All right, all right, all right. We'll include the link for that in the show notes as well. So, only a little bit of time left. Would love to wrap up with some rapid fire Q and A. You ready for it?
Yes, I'm ready.
Ready. All right. Let's get wild. Can you sing? No, I'm just kidding. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Vanilla.
Oh, same. Jinx.
Yes.
What is the number one thing you miss the most about living in Atlanta?
The weather. It is so cold here sometimes.
And you're in Canada. You're close to Buffalo, if I recall, right?
Yeah, yeah. So very close to Buffalo. So whenever you see they're getting like a shit ton of snow, we're getting it too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nobody ever talks about all the cities around Buffalo are getting it too. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I grew up in Cleveland, not too far from Buffalo. We didn't quite have the snow of Buffalo, but we had some, and so very familiar with that. So definitely feel your pain there.
Yeah, I'm so glad I work from home so I don't have to go out in it, but it's brutal.
If Netflix had a massive change and only kept one TV show or one movie to watch, and you had to watch it over and over again, what would you choose for that?
Forensic Files. I'm obsessed.
There's another career path for you.
Yeah, maybe.
And what is your favorite app on your phone that is not a social media app?
Oh, I'm loving the Headspace app right now. It's a meditation, like guided meditation app.
Mm.
I really like it. It's almost like closing all of the tabs in your brain.
Oh, that is incredible imagery. I like it.
Yes.
You took an online analogy to the offline. This is just why you're so good at what you do. Well,
Thank you.
thank you, Andréa Jones, for sharing your story and all your amazing podcast and social media tips. Where's the best place for people to connect with you and to tune into your podcast?
Yeah, for sure. So if you're listening to this, you're probably on a podcast app. Just go to Savvy Social Podcast in the search bar and you'll find me. Listen to that show. That's awesome. You're awesome for listening. But also, I hang out online, OnlineDrea on Instagram, Twitter, all of the social medias. I'm everywhere, but mostly Instagram. I love to hang out there in Instagram stories. So find me there too.
Bam, bam. And then last thing here, final thoughts. The stage is yours. It could be, your favorite opera song, or it could be just a quote, a random line, whatever you want. Send us off here.
So, a final thought would be to also interact in person as well as online. So, I know I talk a lot about online marketing and networking, but I mean, there's such a power in being in real life with people as well. So, don't forget that too.
I can confirm OfflineDrea is pretty cool as well. Thank you, Andrea, for coming on the podcast and sharing all your tips. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also check out our marketing, podcasting, and business growth blogs at hippodirect.com/blog and our newsletter at hippodirect.com/newsletter. That newsletter is the Hippo Digest, and it's your place for wild marketing ideas every single week. And finally, of course, make sure to say hey on your favorite social media platforms at the handles Hippo Direct and Max Branstetter. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!